It's been a while since we browsed the 2000s YouTube. I think we all know things have been very crazy nowadays for everyone, but after some delays I have a new mic, and this video will be the first one with it. Hopefully the rise in quality will be worth the wait. Thanks for sticking around. Black lives still matter, police brutality is still a real systematic problem. Seek out your senators and mayors and keep bugging them. Do what you can, make a change. Alright, let's get to it. The Ring, The Grudge, One Missed Call, Pulse, all of their sequels. The early 2000s saw an explosion of Japanese horror movies' popularity in the West. In 2002, DreamWorks... Wait, what? What? Huh, yeah, that DreamWorks. Oh, their portfolio is way more diversified than I thought as a distributor. In 2002, DreamWorks Pictures distributed Gore Verbinski's The Ring to North American theaters. This film was a remake of the Japanese 1998 horror movie Ringu, made on a very modest $48 million budget. What was not modest was the cash it brought in. The Ring was a huge hit, grossing $249 million at the box office. For comparison, Deadpool was made on a $58 million budget today, an incredibly conservative budget for a major Hollywood film by today's standards, and grossed over $700 million. Both having similar stories of success for their studios. Both films pulled in huge earnings for their studios and did better than they ever expected. The Ring did something even more interesting still. It started a trend. The Grudge was a hugely successful North American J-horror remake released 2 years later in 2004. Dark Water was a successful North American J-horror remake released 3 years later in 2005. And there were many more in between and still to come, like 2008's One Missed Call. Audiences were now craving and throwing money at the specific terror The Ring introduced them to. But what was it that was so special about The Ring, and the larger J-horror genre at the time, and why did it resonate with North American audiences so much? We could look at any of these J-horror remakes at the time to see what hooked audiences, but let's keep it simple and stick to the big two that started it all. When you watch The Ring, you're immediately thrusted into the supernatural hook. Watch the tape and you die in 7 days. There's no dancing around the ghost. You know what will happen and how, and the characters do too. You share in anxiety and stress while borrowed time keeps ticking away as the movie progresses. You're not watching dumb teenagers avoid logic and get picked off one by one in an isolated area. You're following someone very aware that desperately wants to get away. But this isn't some haunted house or some campsite far away from a populated town. The ghost is free to pursue you. There's an immediately pressing stress that comes in right away and doesn't let up. But that stress is only as effective as the movie's world lets it be. If this movie takes place in like the Dr. Seuss's The Lorax, you're not going to be as scared for good reason. The Ring and The Grudge are very aware of this. Atmosphere and sound design are crucial to the fear this movie builds. They're a slow burn as they let you settle into the world and be put off by the tension and atmosphere. The deliberate color lighting choices, the crackle of the static on the television in The Ring. The haunting, guttural sound The Grudge lets out. The atmosphere is an extension of the ghosts. The world is a part of the fear the movie creates just as much as the monster itself is, instead of just a playground for the killer to ransack. But atmosphere and sound design are just techniques, right? They can be adopted and have already been, masterfully in such Western films as The Babadook and Get Out. Movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre also excelled at this in the 70s already, using the world to creep you out, not just the monsters themselves. So what's distinctly Japanese about these horror movies that grabbed audiences? The answer to that is the payoff. Western horror movies are loud. Jump scares are a cornerstone of the genre here. More than just that, brutal violence is often a big part of the payoff in these films over here. The Western world loves its blood and guts. Not to say Eastern horror movies do not, but compare the build-up to a jump scare in, say, Friday the 13th and The Grudge. Let's say both films have a character walking down a long, dark hall. It's quiet. Desperation is at an all-time high as they just want to get away. They need to turn a corner. You and I both know what's around that corner. Don't do it. Don't do it. In a Western horror movie, it's highly likely this will result in a loud stinger as the killer jumps out and attempts to brutally kill the survivor. Chainsaw, axe, machete, everything. In a Japanese horror movie, it's an unsettling, small ghost boy. The stingers are more prolonged and dragged out. The horror is made personal. It's a slow, haunting burn leading to a big bang instead of a series of small fireworks throughout the film. A good way to imagine this is that Western horror movies at the time were very good at creating this kind of atmosphere for the jump scare, for this one isolated scene where they want to get you. Japanese horror movies felt like that entire scene dragged out to the film. In the jump scare scene, you are just as vulnerable as the victim or protagonist of the film because you both know what's about to happen and you are afraid too because of the fear you're about to experience. You know it's coming, just get it over with. The Japanese horror movie craze at this time made that fear personal throughout the entire film. Audiences in North American theaters were genuinely not used to this kind of a payoff. This wasn't seen on such a big scale in Western horror at the time. Violence and sex is what sold in horror for the longest time. We even have a whole subgenre of films from the 60s and 70s we call sexploitation now because of the prominent use of tits and sex to get butts in seats, with a cast of throwaway slashers and victims. Japanese horror was ever so slightly more personal and introspective, fascinating audiences with a change of pace at the time. This trend is commonly accepted to have died out around 2008 to 2009. 2004 saw the release of the first Saw movie. In the following years, the sequels grew more popular. In 2006, Hostel released theatrically, and so on and so forth. As the J-horror boom died out, the torture porn genre was being discovered by mainstream audiences and rising in popularity. A symbolic return to the blood and guts so beloved in Western horror. To put the final nail in the coffin, Paranormal Activity released theatrically in 2009 to insane success, and kicked off a second explosion of found footage films. The last big film commonly remembered to come out of the J-horror craze was One Missed Call, and not for the right reasons. The movie only did okay at the box office, at least surpassing its budget, but was critically panned for being too derivative of everything else at the time, like Final Destination, Scream, and ironically, The Ring. At this point in time, the J-horror genre had lost the one thing that made it interesting to North American audiences: originality and novelty, a break from the norm of what they were seeing in their theaters at the time. The Japanese horror craze of the early 2000s was an interesting time in horror history. Despite grabbing national attention because of its unique differences to Western horror, it ultimately burned out because of rapid cashing in on a fad like the horror genre just loves to do. In doing so, these remakes lost what made them unique and appealing in the transition from Japanese cinema to North American. Whether it be because of less content to consume or a sense of pride, Japan has not tired of these popular characters like we have. The Grudge and Ring series are still going there to this day, with both series hitting double digits of movies released in their home country. The two series have even had a crossover movie like we had Freddy vs. Jason. For any lover of J-horror, there's still plenty to find, and I hope you found something you'd like to watch. Thanks for watching, and see you next time where we'll be browsing the 2000s again for more interesting trends in movies, TV shows, games, music, or whatever you'd like to see in the comments. See ya!